what you think is an A player today is not what you will think an A player is in 5 years. And so I think one of the hardest mental hacks around this is trying to project yourself into the future, into the size business that you want to have, and say, who would be an A player at that size and scale? And then coming back to the present and saying, how do I get them to work for me today?
Amen.
And it's really, and so as a mental process for anybody who does have a business right now and has some employees, if you, like everybody right now, you probably have some version of your A player, because every business has at least one, hopefully, right? Besides you. Imagine your business had 5 of those people. Like, you picture in your head, you've got that one person, now you have 5 of them. How much more would you make? Would you double? Would you 10x? Would you 50x? And sometimes you realize you're like, no, I think I would actually 10x. And so if that were the case, one, not only would you 10x the company, number two, the value of the company would more than 10x because it would no longer be, it would be significantly less reliant on you, and it'd be more reliant on the team that you've built. Number three, it would happen faster because you would have more barrels that were firing concurrently, moving things forward. And those pieces, when put together, you have to then ask yourself from an opportunity cost perspective, what other activity could I be doing that would have the possibility of 10xing my company, doing it faster, and increasing the enterprise value multiple? That's not that. And if you can't find one, then it means you're working on the wrong stuff. And I think that is one of those great litmus tests of, like, if I can find something, and I'll give you a really simple one that's not the talent-based here. Something as simple as calling your leads. So there's tons of research that suggests that you can 4 or 5x your conversion of leads by calling them within 60 seconds of them opting in for any product you have. If you have all of these priorities that you have across the company, does any of them have the high likelihood of 4 or 5xing your business immediately with very low cost of doing so? Less so than just calling the leads within 60 seconds. If the answer is no, then by God, why are you not calling all your leads within 60 seconds? The follow-up question would be like, well, I don't have enough people to call our leads within 60 seconds. So then we'd say, okay, what is 4x the revenue of your company worth? Okay. What does it cost to hire one person whose only job is to just call the leads? Now, I recently talked to a restoration company, so they did water damage for homes when they got hit by storms. And he told me, he said he was converting 55% of his leads, not calls, leads. And I was like, how on earth are you doing this? And I was like, well, how many leads a day do you get? And he said 2 or 3. I was like, okay. So what's the process? He's like, oh, it's really simple. My aunt, I pay her $60,000 a year, and she has only one job. She has no responsibility in the company besides the moment a lead comes in, you stop having sex with your husband, you stop cooking, you stop loving your child, and you immediately call the lead. That's the only responsibility. She just has to make 3 calls a day at the moment the leads come in. And he pays her $60,000, and that brings in millions of dollars of revenue. And so you're not going to pay for it out of the dollars you have now. You're going to pay for it out of the dollars that you're going to make that you're not making yet because you haven't done it yet. And so, pin in that. Back to the people. I think the hardest time, we call this the swamp at acquisition.com, but it's usually between like 1 and 3 million is the swamp. And I think there's a numbers reason for why it's such a painful period for entrepreneurs. Let's say 1 million for simple math. If you have $1 million business, let's say that you have 20% margins. So that means you're making $200,000 a year in profit. For you to get an A player, it's probably going to cost you 100% of your profit to get that A player. And so you'll have what appears to be an impossible choice. You'll have, do I sacrifice basically 100% of my profit to bring this person in? Or do I work another 6 hours a day to do the job that this person is doing? Both paths work. Both are painful and risky because the overworking yourself thing, you can get yourself through that hump, and then now you're at maybe 3 or 4 million, and that 20% is 800. You can spend 200. You still have cash flow. You can still live. The downside for the picking the person path is that what if you pick wrong? And this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is why entrepreneurs get outsized returns, is because we take on outside risk. And so this is the job, is that we have to be willing to make impossible choices. And the vast majority of choices for entrepreneurs in the business are impossible choices between two relatively bad scenarios. Because the rest of the choices don't even feel like choices because they're obvious. Of course we should call our leads faster. Of course we should follow up more. Of course we should try and onboard faster. Okay, all of these things are the obvious ones. But when you have, man, I'm trying to think of the ones that I'm not sure. Almost all the decisions that you get stuck with, and Elon says this really beautifully. He says, running a business is like staring out to the abyss and chewing glass. He said, because the staring out to the abyss component of it is just the fact that this may never work, and you're almost facing existential risk at all times to the business. And the eating glass component is that you will, by nature of your role, get funneled the worst problems in the business and the problems that no one else can solve. So it's one, problems that people can't solve. Two, the worst ones, or that they don't want to solve and they suck. And so you basically become a filter for the worst things. And that's why it feels like a fire every single day in the business, because you're the only one who can make the tough call, because no one else wants to choose between these two impossible choices. And you're like, why is it so hard? And the thing is that it literally never stops being hard. It's that the currency that you pay for in the hardness changes. And so, a lot of people have this envisionment of like the Rocky cutscene of like, it must be hard for business. But I don't think that's where the hardship comes. I think the hardship is that at every level of business, there's new sacrifices that you didn't know you were going to have to make. Because if it was just, I have to work long hours, there's tons of people who work long hours in their business and don't grow. And it's usually because they're unwilling to have a hard conversation. It's a different currency, right? They have to take on risk. It's a different currency. They have to make some sort of bet, right, that they otherwise wouldn't have had to make. They have some sort of legal issue that they encounter. They have an employee who tries to sue them for some sort of whatever, right? All of a sudden you're like, wait, all of these things are happening, and they happen on a regular basis. And at each level, you unlock new levels of glass that you get to chew through. And so this is why, like, most entrepreneurs, in my opinion, don't actually quit. They fizzle. So it's not a big bang. Usually it's, they stop seeking. So either they get content at the level that they're at and they just don't strive for more. And sometimes they say it just wasn't worth the trade. And I respect that. If you're like, you know what, I'm at $1 million a year and I don't want any more, fine, you won. Congratulations, like, you've won at life. But most of the times they don't really quit. They just stop trying. And then they just either coast or it just fizzles into nothingness. And that's just my experience of having, and I'm sure you've seen this, having gone through like cycles of entrepreneur. It's like seasons. It's like, oh yeah, I came in through, and even like in the media and influencer space, whatever. It's like, there's a bunch of guys that 10 years ago, it's a different landscape now than it was 10 years ago. Some people adapted. Some of them were like, I don't like they weren't willing to chew the new glass, which is, how do I learn TikTok? How do I learn? But man, blogs were so good. It's like, yeah, and they're not anymore. I talked to an entrepreneur, really massive, many hundreds of millions a year in sales. And he was like, dude, we were killing it on infomercials. So TV. And he's like, we really just have to crack YouTube. And I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, it's 2024. Like, you needed to crack YouTube 10 years ago. And he had the resources to do it. But it was just a different kind of hard. And so most of the hard is, one, a level of uncertainty that goes into it, and almost certain immediate failure. Because the first thing you're going to do will probably not work. And again, it's the iterations of, when you get into the new domain, you have to transfer your generalized knowledge, which is that as an entrepreneur, I will know that this doesn't work, probably because I only know 4 things about it, and I need to know like 400. And so I will get my first shot, and I need to get directionally correct, and then just keep doing more of that. And so I gave the consulting way of learning kind of like a new space. But if you want to learn a new skill, the fastest way that I do it, that's outside of courses or anything, is tremendous volume of activity. So whether that's like, I want to take a lot of sales calls, I want to do a lot of outreach, I want to make a lot of content, I want to do a lot of customer success calls, whatever it is, you do 100 of those. And then you see, what are the top 10% of these? Okay, what did these top 10% have different than the other 90? And then I say, okay, well, these ones had these 3 things that were different. Let's try and do those 3 things on the next 100. And then because of the variety of life, there's going to be some new variables that exist that you look at the top 10% of the next 100. And you're like, okay, We did those 3, but there's also 2 more things that happened in this 10 versus the other 90. Now let's do all 5 of those things. And over time, this is how you develop a checklist for making banger content and banger videos. And I'm sure, like, there's this clip. David Perel talks about Chris Rock's creative process. And he says, how is it that you see Chris Rock at Madison Square Gardens and it's just like 60 minutes of just fire? You're like, how is this guy so funny? And it's because what you don't see is the many small clubs, and the first club that he goes to and does a whole hour-long set and has like 3 moments that people laugh a lot about. And he's got like 5 minutes that are good. And the other 55 minutes basically suck. And so the next time he goes to a club, he takes those 5 minutes, puts them at the front, and then he tries all new material for the next 55 minutes. And he gets another 5 minutes. And he continues to repeat this process and put the new stuff at the front until eventually he has 60 minutes of uninterrupted laughing. And then people are like, oh my God, he's so talented. I can't believe that he can just stand up there and talk into a microphone and make everyone laugh. Cross age boundaries, cross cultural boundaries, cross all of the boundaries that you might imagine. How can he be so funny to everyone? That's how. How can that guy be so good at writing? Well, he looked at the stuff that he wrote, he found the best stuff, made it into the few things that he always does, and then kept writing. And that fundamentally is the process of learning anything. And it's usually not one thing, it's many small things that when added together in aggregate create the outsized returns.